Exactly 50 years ago, something special started in Bowden, Alberta. Since then, the Alberta Conference Camp meeting has touched many lives. And this year, we'd like to go back to how it all began. With the very first theme we had at Foothills Camp. We invite you to the 2023 Alberta Conference Camp meeting. Come join us to celebrate 50 years of moving by His Spirit.
Welcome to another segment of conference happenings. You know, many of you were at the constituency session back in May. If you weren't, you knew that there was a session coming up, and we had a president that wanted to retire. And so the session was scheduled. Because of COVID, it was scheduled twice, and we ended up having it in May of 2023. I would like to introduce you to the new president of the Alberta Conference. Today I have Pastor Jeff Potts with me. Now, welcome.
Thank you, Debbie.
You know, as a new president, I could probably ask you all sorts of things that you couldn't answer. But you are familiar with the Alberta Conference. But I want to know a little bit more about the background that you've had to get here.
Okay.
Start with where you come from.
I'm an Ontario boy.
Oh, okay.
Grew up in Cambridge, Ontario, an hour west of Toronto. And I was 18 years old when I became a Seventh-day Adventist. I had dated an Adventist girl in high school. When we started dating, I didn't know she was a Seventh-day Adventist. I knew she was a Christian, and I was attracted to that. I had a lot of things going on in my life that were creating some turmoil, and she just had so much peace and so much joy, and I wanted that. And so I started hanging around her. We went out for a couple of years, and during that time she shared the book Desire of Ages with me, and that's where I got to know Jesus. And then we would study the Bible. Her family would invite me over on Friday evenings for sundown worship, and as we studied the scriptures, I realized that the Bible Sabbath really was Saturday. I started attending church, and within a couple of years I had been baptized and joined the Cambridge Church there in Ontario.
So that's your start.
That was the start.
Okay, so your wife is named Nancy.
That's true.
So where did you meet Nancy?
I met Nancy in Williams Lake, British Columbia.
Oh, so she's a good BC girl.
Yes, and you're a BC girl too.
Yes, absolutely.
But I had sensed a call to be a pastor, and my pastor in Cambridge, Ontario, who had encouraged me to go into ministry, he had been Nancy's pastor in BC, there in 100 Mile House and Williams Lake. And he said, Jeff, your parents are not in favor of you being a Seventh-day Adventist. They are not in favor of you becoming an Adventist pastor. But if you could get a job in Williams Lake working at the sawmill, there was an Adventist family that owned a sawmill. He said you could make enough money in one summer to pay for your first year of school. So I applied, and I went out there to work. And the very first day I was there, I was boarding with Nancy's relatives, and she was staying there too. So she was coming out of the washroom with her bathrobe on and her hair up in a towel, and that was the first I ever met Nancy.
Now I know why she doesn't want to do interviews with you. Because I did ask her to come, and it just didn't work out. But she is here on campus too at camp meetings, so you'll have to introduce her to people.
For sure.
So then you came to school here at Burman?
I did, yes. That was back in 1981 was my first year at Burman. And I already had attended university in Ontario, so I had 1 year of university. I did 1 year in theology here, and then I went as a student missionary over to Africa, served in Botswana for a year there as an associate pastor. And that was an amazing experience.
And good training.
It really was.
Yes.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I say I grew up in Africa.
Well, Botswana is in kind of the middle or the south?
It's the south part of the continent, but it is in the middle of the south, just north of South Africa. And you got Zimbabwe on one side, Namibia on the other. But it's a pretty desert country. The Kalahari Desert comprises most of Botswana, but along the border with South Africa, it's quite fertile. And I lived in the capital city of Gaborone.
So as a student missionary pastor, what did they have you doing?
Well, I did a lot of Bible work. I would go door to door and finding people that were interested in doing Bible studies. I conducted seminars. I taught Sabbath school. I preached. It was kind of a mixture of a lot of things.
Is it a Christian country, or was it then?
A lot of Christian people, good people in Botswana.
Because when I was in Uganda, it was very religious country also. So I just wondered how they compared, because there were probably lots and lots of people there.
Yes.
Was it a large city?
Well, Botswana is actually a smaller country, but in the city of Gaborone, there were about 60,000 people, and that was where the population was really concentrated.
Okay. So after you finished your bachelor's degree, then did you go on?
Yes, I graduated from CUC in 1985. Nancy and I married in 84, so our first year of marriage was on campus. And then we had a call to BC and a call to Ontario. And Nancy being from BC and I'm from Ontario, I thought we would have a real tug of war as to where we would go. But we prayed it through, and we felt that God was calling us to Ontario. So we started off there in the London St. Thomas district, there for a couple years, and went to seminary. And when we got back, we were in the Ottawa Valley area, a little bit west towards Toronto, from Ottawa, Carleton Place, Perth, Smiths Falls. And from there, we were there 5 years. From there, we went to British Columbia.
Oh, so you did do both.
We did end up in Terrace, BC.
Oh, you were.
Served there for several years. And then we accepted a call to Winnipeg. And so we ended up 13 years in Winnipeg. That's where I lived with your brother Ken and his wife Shirley. I went out ahead of my family, and so Ken and Shirley Reimke are kind of my adopted parents.
Oh, they're good for that.
They sure are.
So you had some children in amongst those years too, I'm sure. We
have 4 girls. Didn't have any sons, but the sons-in-law are coming now.
Yes.
And we have 3 grandchildren as well. And they live here in Lacombe, and so it's a real joy to have our grandkids close by.
For sure. So amongst all this, I know you were in Winnipeg for maybe 13 years, you said?
Yes, 13 years.
What was your passion there?
Well, I was leading the Henderson Highway Church, and God had really placed a conviction on my heart that we needed more Adventist churches in the city. The city was about 700,000 people. We had 4 churches.
Oh.
And so God put it on my heart that we need to plant more churches. And the church embraced that vision. We planted 4 new congregations in 4 years while I was there. And then after some time, I was actually quite worn out. Believe it or not,
think so.
After that. And so Ken Weeb, who was my conference president in Mansask, he allowed me, I asked, could I work with a couple of the church plants and just you could hire someone else as the lead pastor at Henderson Highway. And he said, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm sure. And so I worked with the Transcona Church and the Lighthouse Church for another 5-6 years after that.
So you stayed in Mansask Conference, Manitoba, Saskatchewan Conference, even after you were in the Winnipeg area. Where did you go?
Well, they invited me to come to the conference office as the executive secretary. And so I left Winnipeg. We packed up our family, most of our family. We had, of course, our daughters have been raised in Winnipeg.
Yes.
And Jolene had established her business as a massage therapist, and so she stayed there when we left. Alyssa was already off. She had graduated from Berman as a teacher, and she and her husband were teaching up in Chetwynd, BC.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyhow, we came with the two youngest girls to Saskatoon and served there for nearly 5 years in the conference office, and that was a real joy. I traveled around visiting the different churches and encouraging the people, and it was really a lovely chapter of ministry.
So that's where you did conference administration.
Yes. I worked with Pastor Ron Nelson. He was the conference president there, and it was wonderful. He was very empowering. Interesting, as he was getting geared up to retire, he later confessed that during about the last 6 months he pulled back to let me carry the weight because he wanted to see if I could really hold my own more in the role of president. Mm-hmm. And later he said, "You know what? You'd make a good president."
So what happened?
Yeah. Well,
because you weren't president of Mansask.
No, they came up to this session, and I was on the short list there, but they ended up going in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And they hired a president who wasn't even on the short list, but they brought him in from the States, and so I continued to serve as the executive secretary there for some time, and then felt a call to come here to the College Heights Church.
I remember when they hired you. So that was how long ago?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
That's, being a church pastor, Henderson Highway is quite large too, but maybe not quite as large as the College Heights Church.
Yeah, it's interesting because many of the lead pastors from Henderson have been hired to serve at College Heights. Pastor Ron Sydenham was one, but there are a number of other pastors that were hired. And when I got to College Heights, I said, I can never fill Pastor Ron Sydenham's shoes. I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to be myself. But we've had a wonderful time, 6 years here at College Heights, and I feel sad to leave that church. The transition was quite abrupt. I was elected on Sunday, May 7, and our union president said, "I want you in the office Monday morning, May 8," and so it was like that.
It was like that.
Yeah.
You did take a few days to go and kind of finish up some of the things that you wanted to do there before.
I did spend a few more hours. I still have work to finish up there, actually.
Do you?
I do.
I'll have to send you over there
Right,
then
yeah.
sometime. So, we're privileged now to have you in with us at the conference office. I know it's been kind of a change, but you have that administrative, you know what goes on in a president's life.
I do.
So you had a better understanding maybe than somebody else.
Yes, I was coming into it with my eyes open.
Yes.
And I knew that it's a very demanding role. I covet the prayers of our people here because I need God's wisdom. I need just the strength and stamina. We have a wonderful team in the office, and I sure enjoy working with you, Debbie, and all of your experience and strong work ethic is just a great blessing.
Thank you. It's easy to work with most people. I've had to change from Pastor Weeb to Pastor Hodder, now to Pastor Potts, but I think that we're all going to get along just fine.
I'm convinced of that.
But that's good. So do you have any goals for the conference here? I know that you've only been in a couple of months, less than a couple of months when we're recording this, but by camp meeting time, it'll be just over 2 months, I think.
Right.
So I know you've been out and about. Have you been out
preaching?
Preaching?
Yes, I've been out preaching some. I've been out visiting churches, visiting pastors, visited some schools, and that I enjoy that. It's a blessing to get out and just encourage our people. And it's exciting to hear the stories.
It is, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I will say this, that I'm working collaboratively with our executive committee to develop a new vision for the conference. And so I'm not coming with a vision saying this is what we're going to do, this is where we're going. I have some ideas, some convictions, but I want to listen to others as we develop that. I'm hopeful that by the end of this year we will have a very clear sense of where God is leading us. And I will say this, that I want to encourage our pastors. We have a great group of pastors here. I want to support them. I don't work directly with the teachers as much, but as much as I can get around and visit them, I want to show appreciation for what they do. My wife Nancy works at College Heights Christian School. She's an EA, and she teaches children that are struggling with reading or math, and she helps them one-on-one, and she loves that. So Nancy, she really, she loves what she does, and she would do it even if she didn't get paid. She would still do it just because she loves it. So being married to someone with the heart of a teacher, I really value what our teachers do.
Yes.
But I would say that in terms of where just in general, where God is leading our conference, number one is to be totally committed to Jesus. Number two, to be radically committed to each other, to love one another in the church. And number three, to be utterly committed to reaching those who are far from God. And so as a basic vision, that's my heart, and that's what I believe God has called us to be and to do here in Alberta.
Well, you've given all of us something to think about, because we'll be working with you as you, your administrative team, the office staff, and your executive committee that's very new. So you'll be able to teach them exactly how things should happen here in this conference.
And I'm excited. We will have our first meeting on Sunday. This is before camp meeting. We're recording this.
Very close to camp meeting.
Our first meeting with the executive committee will be in just a few days from now. And I'm really excited to meet them. I know many of our executive committee members are quite young.
Yes.
Real professionals, have a lot to contribute, have great vision, and I'm eager to work with that committee.
Well, it sounds like you've been doing this all your life. Because if you plant a church, you have to have all those skills also to do the same things that you're doing here as the president of the conference. Is there anything else you would like to say? Except I can say that I'm not going to be able to host camp meeting with you like I did last year, and it was a pleasure. But you're going to be there listening to the people.
I look forward to camp meeting and visiting with our members, hearing what God is doing in our churches and our schools. And God is up to some exciting things here in Alberta. I was visiting one church, I won't say where it was, a few hours away from Lacombe. And I was excited to see in that little church 5 Mennonite families that have embraced the Bible Sabbath and are attending church faithfully each Sabbath. In fact, when I got there, I saw these families walking into church, and the women had their bonnets on, and I thought, am I in the right place here? But God is moving, and His Spirit is moving. And I tell you what, these last days before the coming of Jesus will be exciting ones. And we anticipate that as God blesses, there will be just really incredible growth taking place in the church. We've read, that there'll be thousands baptized in a day and things like this. But it's exciting when we see little snippets of how God is working, and the best is yet to come. I believe the best days of the Alberta Conference are just ahead.
Well, I hope so. I think that you're probably absolutely right, and under your leadership, we will all work towards that. I thank you for being with me, and I hope that you as a member listening online or listening over the radio or looking at this later on our website, I hope that you have a little more insight about what the president of the Alberta Conference really is as a human being and as a pastor and a leader. Thank you for being with me as we have talked to Jeff Potts today.